Yiannis, it's nice to have you on. Actually, I should call you doctor.
No, you shouldn't call me doctor. My friends and my colleagues and everybody I know call me just Yiannis.
Okay, great. So, can you give us a bit of background? Who are you and what is your background? How did you find yourself in this project?
Look, I don't think it's a very good idea to start talking about my original background and how did I ended up here, because it starts a long time ago with studying medicine and systems engineering, this kind of stuff. But there was a turn in my career more than 20 years ago when I decided to do something more meaningful for society, for things that are more urgent. And my major drive for this particular project in this time on Earth, let's say, is that we are going through some difficult phases worldwide, that young people across the world are unemployed and they don't participate in things that are so important for their lives, but they still have to live those lives. By the time they are born, they owe so much money to society. It's like they are having a loan that they never applied for. And I feel guilty, like everybody in my generation should feel guilty about that. So my drive is to give voice to those who actually own the future, to decide about their future, and maybe find solutions to the problems that the planet is facing, and they are the root causes of things that go wrong, like the corruption, the lack of accountability, and all these shortcomings of what we call democracy. So we came up with my colleagues with the idea of running global workshops. We call them collaboratories, because it's not like a workshop where some expert comes in and knows the truth, but it's like an environment in which the participants discover themselves the knowledge, and they build it up and they deepen their understanding about what they're discussing. So these collaboratories, they take place around the globe. We have money to do 5 of them in different continents. But our vision and our hope is that participants, like yourself, will create spin-offs, because they will be empowered by this opportunity, and they will be fascinated by the fact that this structured democratic dialogue process creates the environment for ideas to be born and to grow. So that's a little bit about the context.
And how long down the line are we talking about? How long has it taken you to come up with such a project, Reinventing Democracy in the Digital Era? And how easy or how difficult was it to come up with something like this?
This is not a project that was born on one day. I mean, you know that people who work for civil society, they think about projects that make a better world all the time. So you do projects on sustainability, projects on women empowerment, projects on media literacy and all this stuff, until you gradually realize that the root cause is deeper. It goes down to the politics, to the politicians, and finally to the system. And when we realized that it goes down to the system, we started working on projects to discover what are the root causes collectively. And 2012, that means 4 years ago, we did 3 separate projects, and interestingly, they all came down to the same conclusions, that the root causes of where we are today, worldwide, doesn't have to do with one country or another, have to do with the fact that while technology is changing every aspect of our lives, it still didn't change the way we govern ourselves. And there is a reason it didn't. Because once it does invade into the political system, it will create such a transparency and such possibilities for people to participate more actively and more often in the process, that it will become increasingly difficult for the few to exploit the system against the masses.
Okay.
So this is what it comes down to. So now the question is, what kind of projects, what kind of ideas can the younger generation come up with to develop systems and put them in place to counterfight the shortcomings of corruption, of lack of accountability. So in other words, we need new systems of governance. I mean, imagine the system that we call democracy was born by my ancestors 2.5 thousand years ago. And for those who might not know that democracy was born in ancient Athens, that democracy was almost direct democracy. It was representative democracy in some respect, but they were not elected. They were chosen by lottery. You see, it's funny. The ancient Athenians, they believed that lottery can give you better results than elections. Now today, we spend millions of money to elect our representatives. And we end up with some representatives that are they better than the average man on the coffee shop? Many people, I'm not sure whether they are better. Do they know more about the issues that they are supposed to know? Do they have some kind of a license to manage countries? I mean, to drive a car, you need a driving license. To drive a country, you need nothing. This doesn't make sense in the minds of the young people. And I want to consider myself a young person. I'm on the side of the youth.
Okay.
So I want to feel like the youth who are frustrated, who don't understand what's going on and why. And we need answers, not why something is going wrong, but how are we going to fix it.
And I want to use the example of the car you just gave. Don't you think if basically everything is digitalized, management, governance, everything, then human beings won't even be in control of anything anymore? For example, the car, yes, you drive the car, but does it really give you complete control over the car and what happens to it in the next 1 second or 2 minutes?
Yes, you are touching upon a problem that is in the horizon. We call it the singularity, when the computers and the machine will be more clever than us and they will be running the planet. But that's another reason we are working on this kind of projects, because the singularity might not be as far as many people think. So when that moment comes, we have to be prepared. So we need the human wisdom to prevail. So for the human wisdom to prevail, we need methodologies that allow many brains, many human brains, to collectively work together and find better solutions to complex problems. So if we do that, we will avoid giving our power to the machine. But for now, we need the machine, we need the technology to assist us. So you went too far by thinking of the car going by itself and me not having any control at a time when the machine can still make a lot of mistakes. But even now, the car has a lot of technology on it. To be clever, even by the way the car stops, it stops faster because it has the technology in it. So there is semi-intelligence in the car, and that's why our cars are much safer than the cars of before, 10 years ago. So we need the same. We need to go step by step also with governance. Now we spend millions to make an election when it's so easy to vote through mobile phones. And don't tell me that it's not secure, because we know that also the physical voting systems in many countries are not secure. And don't tell me that they cannot be hacked, because every day I buy things from Amazon and from other places using my credit card, and it's safe enough. We have very, very powerful computer systems to make elections very safe. And don't tell me people don't have mobile phones. I know you will tell me in the African context many people cannot afford mobile phones, so they are not digitally literate to vote through mobile phone. But this is now, it's not tomorrow. And even now, I see people in the streets who cannot afford to buy water speaking on a mobile phone. So it's not true. The world is changing very fast. And when we define a solution now, it doesn't mean it has to be applied now. By the time we complete our discussion, the world will move on. So if we are designing for the future, we have to also anticipate how the world will be tomorrow. Because if we are finding a solution for the world of today, by the time we finish up defining that solution, it's going to be late.
Okay, and have you also considered the aspect of actually convincing people today to accept technology, as a main driver for democracy? Because it's one thing to have it available and have it useful and have it efficient, and another thing to really convince people to get to use these means.
It's not my job to convince anybody. It's your job. It's the younger generation who does it. But if you're asking my personal opinion, I don't think you need to convince anybody about technology. Technology is already over-convincing, and it's invading every aspect of life. Technology is not something that you need to be convinced of. You know, you see, it's like you give somebody who thinks and can create ideas a pen to write. You don't need to convince them after that the pen is useful. They already know it. So if somebody can write with a pen and then you give them a computer, you don't need to convince them that the computer is useful, because the moment they start typing on the computer and they are able to edit what they write, and it's not one way like the old days where you type it on the typing machine and then you cannot fix it. It's only going through the experience of using technology, it's convincing by itself. For example, my mother is over 70 years old. I didn't need to, I tried to convince her that she should get into technology, but I wasn't able. But the moment she became a grandmother, and my daughter, grandmother, and my daughter lives in America, and she cannot see the baby, but also her own granddaughter, and I gave her an iPad, a mobile device, and I showed her that by touching this icon, which is called Skype, she can talk to her. I don't need to convince her, because she doesn't really care what technology does. All she cares is that by touching this button, she can talk and see her. So that's all she cares. Okay. So I don't think there is a lot of convincing that is necessary. It's just giving them the possibility to use these power tools, then they demand them. Once they give you a car, you don't go backwards and say, I can live without a car. Once they give you a mobile device, you don't go back and say, you need to convince me to continue using my mobile phone.
Okay, and we're talking about democracy, and it's not every other government that wants to use this form of governance. What do we do to this kind of systems of governance that do not really consider democracy as their modus operandi?
Throw them down, change them. The word is changing. I mean, I'm saying that as kind of a joke, but the last few decades, we saw in the world of what we call capitalism, giants falling down from, and I'm talking about corporations, that have huge values. From one day to the other, they just fall down and become nothing, and they disappear. In the same way, we're going to see this happening to governments. It's just outside the door. Governments, as we know them, they will start falling apart, and the only reason they didn't start falling apart now is because we haven't defined alternatives yet. You see, the bookstores, they fall apart the moment that somebody started selling books online. The vinyl record shops fall apart the moment the CDs and the iPods came out. So the moment we, people like you and young people all over the world, start defining alternative solutions that will do the same things like governments do today, governments will simply become, and politicians, when I say government, I mean what we call politicians and representatives in parliaments, they will become needless, historical elements that kids will learn in school, that in the past people were kind of trusting their lives and their futures in the hands of some people who mostly became corrupted and didn't represent them well anymore. So we will be learning this in schools, and that's not far away from today. Like I said, this will start moving and falling apart the moment the new appears and it's tangible and clear how it will be functioning.
Okay, let's get back to the collaboratory, like the one we have here in Kenya, Nairobi, Kenya. It's a process. It begins from idea generation. How difficult has it been to get young people from different backgrounds with different realities to actually propose ideas, and then we bring them down to something concrete that we can implement and really have a change in society? And could you
collaboratory, the term collaboratory, since you mentioned it, doesn't mean collaboration, because some people mix it up with collaboration. It's not collaboration, it's a co-laboratory, meaning that it's like a laboratory, like a scientific laboratory, where people discover something together, collectively. So this is where the term collaboratory comes from. Now, the methodology that we are using, which is called structured democratic dialogue, is responsible for making sure that people are liberated and can produce ideas. Because from the moment you put them in the room, it means that you have already defined what they are going to talk about, and you have already carefully chosen these people to be pluralistic in ideas, different types of stakeholders from different backgrounds and countries. So you have a good mixture that is not homogeneous but the opposite. So they represent different views from society, okay? So when you put them there, of course they have opposing opinions and views, but because the methodology is so structured, it encourages everyone to express their opinion. And because we do that in phases, the first phase, as you might remember, we just collect a statement, the title of your idea. So one person says one sentence, 20 people are listening, and they don't know what the person means. So they have to be patient later to ask questions. Then we do this very modern approach of clarifying their ideas in front of a video camera, like people in the industry do for startup companies, where they pitch for their ideas. So you give them 1 or 2 minutes to talk about their ideas, look at the other people in the eyes, have the camera in front of them, which makes them also become comfortable with the media, which is important, because we are asking people to stand up and speak. But if you don't have the courage to speak in front of a camera, how can you speak in front of society? How can you dare then express your opinion when there is also some slight danger that you might be in danger of being victimized for your ideas? So at the same time, we are collecting the ideas of people, but we are also empowering them to verbalize them and to be brave enough to explain their ideas in front of people. And then come more difficult phases, where we support people with the methodology to put the ideas in groups and then vote. And the most important is when we explore relations between the ideas, because you have like 50, 100 ideas on the wall, but then you cannot do all of them. So how do you decide which are the deep drivers, those that have the most energy for change? And only by asking the question of whether one influences the other, you decide for 2 ideas at a time, and then gradually you build these maps, and then it's like a wow effect that everybody says, wow, this is where I should put my effort. And this is what your group has been so successful. I mean, your maps are wonderful. They have many ideas on, and you see there are some ideas at the root of the tree, and you know that this is where you should be working. And they all have to do with transparency, new media, community radios, citizens journalism, access to information, freedom of speech, not punishing those who speak up. Those are at the bottom. And for me, don't ask me if I was surprised. No, I was not. Even though I don't speak, because this is my role, I'm a facilitator, I cannot express my opinion. And sometimes I pretend that I am surprised, but honestly, I'm not. Because every time I do these workshops, we reach the same results. The only difference is that it's different people becoming conscious about this interdependence of the issues at hand.
Okay. And this workshop in Kenya, which number is this? Is it the first in Africa?
This is the second in the series of Reinventing Democracy in the Digital Era, which is global. I don't know if we have mentioned that this project is partly or mostly funded by the United Nations Democracy Fund, which makes it a very prestigious project. It's not like the UN is giving us a lot of money, but imagine if the UN Democracy Fund is funding a project that is global, taking place in all continents, and it's called Reinventing Democracy in the Digital Era. It's like the UN is telling us that we need to reinvent democracy, which is why we wanted so much the support of the UN. Now that we have the support of the UN, which is not a lot, we are relying on people across the world appreciating our work and multiplying it. People like yourself. Because we did one first collaboratory for the European countries, We spent a beautiful week with a lot of ideas. Now we have our people.
Where was that?
That was 3 months ago, and it took place in Cyprus. And it had representatives from almost 20 European countries. Now all these young people from these countries are now working on projects. Many of them are even putting applications to replicate what we did, to get more money than the whole global project, to do it just in their country.
Yes.
Some of them are organizing in their country similar collaboratories without any serious funding by convincing some university or some NGO to host it, somebody to finance maybe the logistics of bringing people together. Our team is supporting by being willing to self-finance itself to go and support these people. So we think it's going to develop more on the planet, even though that's only the second. Now we have a third one coming up in Asia, another one in Latin America, and another one in the Arab world.
Okay. Yesterday off the camera you mentioned an issue to me about, I don't know if it's social or psychological, about how humans easily can come up with problems, but really to come up with solutions, it's a problem. Is this a major challenge you've been having in the co-laboratories?
It's not a psychological, it's a social problem. This has to do with the way we are brought up, because all our lives we are facing obstacles. So we become very good in recognizing obstacles. But we spend very little time in the educational system or in our real lives being challenged to find solutions to obstacles. So our brain is conditioned to be able to recognize challenges very easily and problems, but once you are trying to give birth to a solution, you don't know. So it's always, every group I work with, they produce more ideas for challenges, less ideas for products. Once you encourage them and they get into the mood of becoming very clear where the problem lies and what kind of projects or products have impact, then they are empowered, and then they become like giving birth to many, many more projects.
Okay. And do you think we should include something in the educational system that can actually make people come out of the shell, and be able to tackle issues?
Definitely. Now you are touching upon another big issue. Educational systems, as we know, they are also outdated. They are completely outdated in many, many respects. They are not really preparing citizens for the future. They are not even preparing citizens for today. But even worse, because when we say prepare citizens for the future, usually we think about jobs. If you think about jobs, it's like saying, let's ask those who have the jobs to tell us how to prepare them for their jobs. But if you do that, it's like you are preparing pieces of an engine to feed an engine. So how is going to develop the new engine if everybody is a part of the existing engine? So what the educational system should do is liberate people to dream and design something that doesn't exist, the future of the planet. And the current educational system doesn't do that. It's very down to earth. So we need a lot of creativity building in the educational systems, which will help us when we produce ideas about solutions. But we also need a lot of ideas, a lot of humanistic ideas, and to cultivate at a very young age the spirit of collaboration, of ethics, of empathy, and not only the practical skills of how to do things and how to do STEM, for example, science, technology, and all this focus that many countries have now, which is taking us away from a humanistic society. And even more, you need to find ways to promote working together. Because we say that we promote projects in the educational system, we tell children to collaborate and so on, but when it comes to scoring them, we score individuals. So why don't we score the group and we score individuals? So the whole assessment system is wrong.
Okay.
Not to mention that schools are a creation of the last 2 centuries. We didn't have schools before. And not to mention that the majority of things that an adult knows, he or she did not learn them in school, which tells something about how useful the schools are, which means that schools need to kind of dissolve into society. And when we say lifelong learning, it's like we have school and non-formal education outside of school.
Yes.
I don't think we should separate them like that. I mean, education should be everywhere at every time. So there are a lot of things that need to change, but that's a bigger discussion. We need to do another global project, Reinvent
Another
education.
collaboratory for that.
Yes.
Okay, away from the hard part to the soft. Can you tell me, is this your first time in Africa? And if it is, how has it been?
So you're asking me Africa, not,
Yes, Africa
not
now.
Kenya.
No, Africa first of
No,
all.
it's not my first trip in Africa. I've been, I visited South Africa about 10 years ago. And I spent 3 weeks there, so I saw a lot, but not enough. And I also visited Kenya 2 years ago. But in general, yes, I am very sorry and humble to say that I'm kind of new to Africa. I visited like 100 countries, but not so many African countries. So I'm looking forward to visit more and mingle more with Africa.
And how has the experience been so far?
Very, very positive. For example, the African participants here, I dare to say that they are more committed and maybe more deep in their thinking about what's going wrong in their countries than the European ones. Maybe it's a little bit different context and perspectives that they have, but still they are different. And you saw it too. We have a break, we have lunch break, we finish in the evening and nobody wants to leave. They want to work more. That's not usual. I mean, the stereotype that people have is that in the less developed countries, people work less. And my observation is the opposite.
Okay. Thank you so very much for making our time for this interview. It was nice having you, and I look forward to working with you more.
Thank you.
Not only on this project, but on the educational project too, because that really sounds interesting.
I am grateful for this opportunity, and I'm looking forward to a follow-up interview in your country.
Of course, in Cameroon.
In
You're
Cameroon,
welcome to
welcome.
Cameroon anytime.
So like we said, we are going to organize a structured dialogue session in Cameroon. So let's start working.
That's done. Thank you very much.